Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you at our traditional open research seminars. And today we have a very important topic related to fiscal-monetary interaction, which is actually not only important for Ukraine, but also for the rest of the world. But today we are going to hear a presentation from Serhii Shvets from Institute of Economics and Forecasting of Ukraine. And he will talk about his research on fiscal-monetary interaction in mitigating the negative effects of fiscal dominance in Ukraine in post-war recovery. Serhii, the floor is yours. We have 1 hour and 45 minutes for presentation and 15 minutes for questions. We are pretty flexible on the format. If you want to collect questions during the presentation or after, it's up to you, so you just can mention. Yeah, so let's get started.
I'm ready. And as for sharing my screen, it's okay or not?
Not yet. We don't see anything.
We don't see anything yet.
What about now?
Now we can see your slides, but if you can make it in the full screen mode, it would be perfect.
Yes, I see.
Maybe Control L or Dear Serhii, if you try to press slideshow over here and then full screen mode.
F5, 5. It's difficult for me. Please help me. I don't know what to press. Maybe I have some experience, but for now it's difficult.
Yeah, this is a very okay. So do you see an arrow on your screen?
Yes, narrow. I see.
Can you press slide show on the
slideshow? I mean
slideshow.
F5 slideshow. I mean.
Okay.
There is a menu on the top, file, edit, and so on, and there is slideshow there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can we see your slides and we can follow, so you don't need to put it in the full screen. We just can follow as it is.
I understand. You see my slide, but not in full screen. It's my
I think this is not a problem. I mean, we can follow your slides. We can see it perfectly, so we can read it. So if you just continue and follow your slides, that would be great.
Maybe later. So I start.
Yeah.
Dear colleagues, I would like to present the results of the research dedicated to the much discussed topic, that is fiscal-monetary interaction. This topic has been at the center of the political debates since the global events triggered by successive crises. I mean the COVID-19 and the Russian military invasion. Ukraine's economy is undergoing a rapid transformation in connection with the above-mentioned events. In this context, the performance of the economy has a lot to do with its ability to survive. Ukraine has so far found a path to recovery with the help of substantial external financing. But there's still a long way to go, given the challenges of post-war recovery. And this recovery depends to a large extent on balanced efforts in the fiscal-monetary interaction. In Figure 1, you can see the faithful cycle of evolution that Ukraine's economy has gone through over the past few decades. The cycle reestablishes the path that adheres to the quantity theory of money and more strictly to the equation of exchange. For more visual effect, filters are applied to make the path smooth and balanced. I tried to
Serhii, I'm very, very sorry. We still see your first slide. If you can scroll your slides so we can see the first figure.
It's not the first figure.
No, it's only the first slide.
So let's reconnect. I try to.
Yeah, so start screen share one more time and then.
Yes, I understand. I do.
I'm very sorry for this.
Serhii, I'm sorry, but so you can, it's better for you and it will be better for us when you will share not your window, but the process, I mean, PPT power.
What I. Maybe desktop.
Yes, if you now press F5 for the full screen. Right, we can see your slides now in a full screen mode. Now, please scroll your slides so we can see that it works or not. Yes, great. We can see your first figure.
So
and
sorry
for
continue. Yes? I can continue. Thank you very much for your help and excuse me for this.
That's no
technical
problem.
Stop. It's my fault. I be maybe later I be moving it. So in future, I continue. The cycle reestablishes a path that adheres to the quantity theory of money and more strictly to the equation of exchange. It's important. For more visual effects, filters are applied to make the path smooth and balanced. I tried to make the chart even more presentable by adding a third dimension that corresponds to a factor of endowments, labor. You will see that Ukraine, following the path of the foreign nation, is actually stagnating, despite its strong historical profit, the independence. The starting point of 2005 was optimistic, and Ukraine moved forward with desired success. The crisis in 2008 till 2009 interrupted the progressive movement, which later resumed with somewhat weakened intentions. Since the Revolution of Dignity, Ukraine has tried hard to consolidate its efforts, especially in the fiscal and monetary policies. However, it has not achieved much so far, returning to the starting point of 2005 and losing a significant part of its resources, especially the labor force. Among the causes and consequences of Ukraine's stagnation, public debt ranks first. The dynamics of internal public debt, the bulk of which is domestic government bonds, can be easily reproduced by a second-order polynomial trend, Figure 2. The trend is at least 10 years old and not distorted by the COVID-19 and the Russian military invasion. A closer look at the dynamics of internal public debt shows that this factor is closely related to the formation of broad money in the Ukrainian economy. This connection is realized through the monetary transmission of financing the budget deficit. Though the monetized debt is large enough to motivate the volatility of broad money supply, figure 3, the maximum correlation is recorded during crisis periods corresponding to the adjustment in the monetary transmission conditions when debt dynamics dominate those of other financial indicators. The relationship between broad money and internal public debt was used to develop an econometric macro model of the fiscal-monetary interaction, figure 4. These three sectors are present in the model: real, fiscal, and monetary. The capital factor in the modified Cobb-Douglas production function is represented by public investment. The proposed specification is reasonable since change in public investment are mainly due to change in the financing of this indicator at the expense of state and local budgets. The relationship between the real and fiscal sectors of the economy is realized through fixing the financial flows in the money and foreign exchange markets. Thus, the model simulates the provision of production factors, capital and labor, with financial resources by redistributing them in national and foreign currency between these sectors. The input parameters of the macro model are domestic government bonds and economically active population. Bonds are both a source of financing the budget deficit and an essential factor in simulating the interaction between money and foreign exchange markets. This interaction eventually determines the dynamics of the CPI and the exchange rate. The macro model consists of 12 equations. They are production factor, function, GDP, government investment, wage per worker, government expenditure, inflation, unemployment rate, government revenue, exchange rate, exports, broad money, which is exploits the above-mentioned relationship between broad money and government bonds, wage fund, and employed population. The model used to make the focus for the period 2006 till 2019. I limit the forecasting horizon to 2019 because statistical data on the dynamics of labor and public investment are unavailable due to military law restrictions or require significant adjustments. The modeling results are robust as the mean absolute percentage error is less than 3%, 2.6% to be precise, figure 5. The modeling results show that the relationship between broad money and domestic government bonds is not steady. The monetary transmission changed every time the economy was in crisis, figure 6. In 2009 till 2014, the slope of the relationship equation was 0.002. Later, it was almost halved to the value 0.0007, and now it has returned to its previous value of 0.002. The relationship between broad money and public debt turns out to be a complex factor that requires further detailed study. The well-known government intertemporal budget constraint reflects, among other things, the linear relationship between the change in government debt and the change in monetary base, which is related to seigniorage. In the case of broad money creation, the given relationship involves non-linearity. This is because many financial intermediaries need more transmission operations to reach equilibrium in the money market. The current study introduces its version of a nonlinear relationship between broad money and public debt in the form of empirical specification 1. The nonlinear component of the equation is an irregular movement of the public debt ratio relative to the steady state, simulating the turbulence that an economy experiences during crisis. The coefficient degree of fiscal dominance introduced in the equation 1 corresponds to the measure of debt burden, which is further translated into broad money multiplication. The higher the level of public debt and its gap ratio relative to the steady state, the more money is supplied to reinforce the given degree of fiscal dominance. A full illustrative report of the correlation between broad money M3 and public debt for selected neighboring countries based on the empirical specification 1 is submitted in figures 7, 8, 9, and 10. Poland has a moderate degree of fiscal dominance, 1.0, with a debt to GDP ratio of 68%. The Czech Republic has a higher degree of fiscal dominance, 1.7, with a lower debt to GDP ratio of 48%. Hungary has a much lower degree of fiscal dominance, 0.7, with a higher debt to GDP ratio of 89%. And at last, Ukraine shows almost the same fiscal dominance as Hungary, equal to 0.8, and a moderate debt ratio of 43%. Between, I used the period between 2005 and 2021. To further investigate the fiscal-money interaction, I developed a dynamic stochastic equilibrium DGF framework, which is a canonical new Keynesian model designed for a small, open, developing economy. The description of the model structure accounts for complex fiscal and monetary blocks by incorporating equation 1, but in a more appropriate specification. According to the updated specification, the new key factor of fiscal sustainability corresponds to the dynamics of the gap between money supply and public debt in favor of the former. In this case, money creation should exceed the need for fiscal adjustment to be consistent with sustainability goals. What is new and important is the presence of the purely monetary indicator, broad money, in the reconstructed public debt sustainability rule. This means that money plays an effective role in policy decisions and in the adjustments of fiscal accounts. Thus, the fiscal monetary nexus is at the forefront of the fiscal sustainability rule. The nominal interest rate target is subject to an alternative Taylor rule. The modification implies that the monetary authorities control the dynamics of the public debt to output ratio in the same way as they react to the deviations of the inflation and output from their steady states. Under the fiscal dominance regime, the response of the interest rate policy to the public debt movements can be either negative or positive. The negative case is a short-term factor that alleviates the debt burden by expanding aggregate demand in the form of the rising consumption and output through a lower real interest rate. Debt movements restore a baseline position by reducing interest payments, which may take longer. The given settings are compromised by limited financial resources and the fiscal capacity to pursue expansionary policy as long as the short-term gains are accompanied by monetary accommodation. The positive response to fiscal dominance provides a less pronounced but longer-lasting effect. Monetary austerity limits uncontrolled fiscal expansion by leaving room for the correction of fiscal imbalances while maintaining liquidity and capital mobility and promoting macroeconomic stability. The possible consequences of such measures are excessive price volatility and its impact on macroeconomic dynamics. This case is considered in the current study to establish the active monetary position and promote the value of fiscal monetary interaction. In the newly specified monetary sustainability rule, the monetary authority monitors the gap between the velocity of money creation and the degree of fiscal adjustments, with the contribution of public debt each in its initial state change. The velocity of broad money creation should not exceed the growth of public debt. As long as money creation remains within the bounds of public debt growth, the potential threat of excessive price dynamics is minimal. Otherwise, the nominal interest rate should respond positively, eliminating potential inflationary pressures. The model structure incorporates a composite lifetime utility generating function for Ricardian and non-Ricardian households with separability in preferences between private and government consumption and real money holdings, equation 6. The complex specification of aggregate private consumption is consistent with robust evidence that deep habit formation allows for the more flexible representation of consumption preferences. In addition, government purchase of goods and services can shift the marginal utility of private consumption. In turn, the substantial format dampens a combined response of private consumption and labor supplies to a public spending shock. This more severe case is tightened to the actual benchmark conditions. A crucial notation of this specification is the bypassing discount factor shock, which is mandatory to bring the economy to a zero below bound and is not actual for developing economy. While Ricardian households are intertemporal consumers who accumulate and rent capital to firms and hold government bonds, non-Ricardian households consume all their disposable income each period. According to the budget constraint of the Ricardian households, they consume private goods, gain welfare from holding real money balances in the current and previous periods, invest in the production of goods, access domestic and foreign financial markets by buying riskless government bonds in real terms under no Ponzi condition denominated in the domestic and foreign currencies, receive benefits in the form of past term real domestic and foreign interest, charge real interest on past period capital accumulation, find compensation in the form of wage, and pay lump sum taxes. The other details of the model structure are low level of public investment efficiency, absorptive capacity constraints, and a well-positioned set of rigidities. These rigidities include deep habit formation, stacked pricing a la Calvo, and wage stickiness in monopolistically competitive firms, violating the neutrality principle of money holdings. The production function exhibits constant returns to scale to the production inputs of private capital in the previous period and labor force. This is a qualified requirement for the endogenous setting. The framework allows for a direct endogenous effect of public investment on output by including public capital in the production function. That is, the production function indicates increasing return to scale. Equation 8. It is well known that the efficiency of public investment is not perfect, especially in the case of a developing economy. In this context, one currency unit of investment expenditure may yield less than one currency unit of public capital. Another problem is related to absorptive capacity constraints. As public investment increases relative to the capital stock, absorptive capacity constraints also increase, which tends to slow the rate of public capital accumulation and discourage the benefits of high investment. Following this assumption, the law of motion for public capital accumulation takes the form of equation 9. In addition, the model embeds a negative relationship between interest rate premium and foreign price fluctuations. This affects the economy, external competitiveness, and borrowing condition, equation 10. The results of integrated responses to the public spending shock are depicted in the figure 11. Prompted by comprehensive fiscal measures, the shock induces rapid output growth, requiring additional fiscal stimuli to service the increased public spending. Taxes react fast, fixing a radical jump within a brief time. The fiscal stimuli for demand activation are short-lived, so the output dynamics are also accelerated temporarily. Price and wage rigidities limit a positive price response, making the output growth slows down longer than would otherwise be the case. In addition, the relatively lower efficiency of public investment does not contribute dramatically to the output dynamics. The absorptive capacity constraints also limit the growth incentives. Private consumption differs in that it allows for the presence of non-Ricardian and Ricardian households. While the initial reaction of Ricardian households to the increased task pressure is adverse, these consumers quickly reestablish a positive trend. Ricardian consumers, on the other hand, are cautious and expect massive fiscal consolidation shortly. The ongoing monetary response to the public spending shock actively absorbs the issuance of government bonds in domestic and foreign currency and the corresponding senior rush effect. Monetary policy is less accommodative as it monitors the degree of fiscal expansion and more strictly the public debt to output ratio. The monetary targeting regime prevents excessive inflationary pressures, causing the real interest rate to react positively. This reaction is a forced measure as a temporary fiscal imbalance makes it difficult to achieve sufficient revenue mobilization and provides a strong dominant position. The result of these factors is tight monetary policy accommodation with a downward effect on prices. In order to simultaneously meet fiscal and monetary sustainability conditions, the economy initially reacts to the public spending shock with excessive macroeconomic volatility. This is especially in terms of public debt and price dynamics, which consequently leads to less optimistic growth incentives. I generate two additional scenarios to simulate realities of Ukraine's post-war economic recovery. For this, both scenarios, there are restrictions on the amount of fund raised through external public borrowing, with priority given to financing the budget deficit through domestic government bonds in hryvnias. In addition, the first scenario assumes that the monetary response to fiscal dominance is minimal, rho B equals 0.09. And the second scenario assumes that the monetary response to fiscal dominance is appropriate and sufficiently motivated, rho B equals 0.24. The results of scenario modeling confirm that fiscal and monetary authorities play a crucial role in maintaining sustainability conditions, including the instruments chosen to ensure an appropriate policy regime. The results demonstrate an effective joint policy framework that can agree on fiscal and monetary sustainability conditions to mitigate the consequences of fiscal dominance if it persists over time. I want to emphasize on the initial conditions of the quantitative framework that determines the starting point for responding to shock. On the fiscal side, it is the initial share of capital expenditures in total government expenditure. And on the monetary side, it is the real interest or discount rate. Thus, in fact, only two policy instruments are initially involved in the fiscal-monetary interaction. In this context, it is worth mentioning the new policy intentions for the fast and efficient implementation of the key investment projects and reforms foreseen in the newly started EU program, disbursements under the Recovery and Resilience Facility. The document highlights, among other things, that fiscal policy should be targeted and focused on stimulating potential growth through public investment and structural reforms. A regime of fiscal dominance to survive the crisis leaves no choice but to decide on practical steps, which will be mentioned later, based on the results. A high degree of fiscal dominance is likely to prolong the recovery period due to possible undesirable consequences. These effects may require considerable efforts to overcome. Thus, the overall period of destabilization may be longer in any case. The proposed interactive fiscal and monetary measures, which involve a joint adjustment policy to maintain sustainability conditions, negatively affect growth momentum, which is critical in downturn. A possible solution in this situation is to reset the initial conditions, which are public investment and the monetary policy rate. Progress depends on these initial conditions. Public investment should maximize its share in public spending, and the key policy rate should be lower, increasing the potential for response. I'd like to stop now. It's very important to know that these initial conditions are obtained practically using this model, and only two parameters, as I mentioned before, very crucial in making policy decision. And these policy decisions we see many countries, especially developed ones, try to implement in their policy. What it is? It is inflation target. I mean, this bounds maybe not so strict and have some violations in the future. And now, as to major place of public investment and its impact on the overall macroeconomic performance, it's not actual for the world economy, for the developed economies. It's very important for Ukraine too. It will be noted later in the closing notes I mentioned above, and I speak this later in the concluding remarks. On the next slide, I would like to illustrate the vital place of fiscal dominance in the complex interplay between fiscal and monetary policy. Scenario modeling focusing on the cross-sensitivity of growth, depth and sustainability, and the monetary policy response to fiscal dominance was used to construct the three-dimensional graph shown in Figure 13. In pursuing growth incentives, the fiscal authority calls for active expansionary steps linked to the dominance regime. That is, the degree of fiscal dominance is directly correlated with output in the short run, as fiscal dominance in the short-term stimulus. However, the monetary and fiscal authorities should actively respond to the consequences of the aggressive dominant steps and provide a joint sustainable position. The effectiveness of the joint fiscal monetary sustainability measures prevents an excessive public debt burden, but does curb the growth momentum. In this context, it is acceptable to allow a more resilient increase in the public debt burden to transform the tight steps of fiscal dominance into a rapid economic recovery. But the policy steps must be well controlled. The upward trend in public debt dynamics is the mere price to pay for stimulating recovery, and this price has to be paid for no reason. The question is whether the debt trend, not debt ratio, is well controlled, as it is difficult to eliminate the possible consequences of protracted fiscal dominance, especially in the near future. Thus, the public debt ratio is not the final indicator to determine fiscal sustainability conditions. It is the degree and duration of dominance, rather than ratio of public debt to output, that fiscal and monetary authorities should consider in pursuing growth incentive policy. And at last, key summary points. In the face of successive crises, which significantly accelerated the global debt trend, a policy review is underway that goes beyond the basic view of the fiscal-monetary interaction. The era of lower interest rate and inflation is coming to an end, and the task of sustainable growth, which is primarily related to price stability, can be solved by adjusting the inflation target and the natural interest rate to slightly higher levels. Fiscal and monetary authorities should jointly control the consequences of fiscal dominance to avoid excessive volatility in financial indicators. This study demonstrates an effective rule of thumb that allows for maintaining fiscal and monetary sustainability conditions for both public debt and price dynamics. These joint measures largely prevent excessive macroeconomic volatility but weaken growth momentum. Monetary dominance in the fight against inflation in 2022-2023 in Ukraine is likely to give way to fiscal dominance in the second half of 2024, when external financing may not be as due as before. It is unlikely that two dominant positions of the fiscal and monetary authorities can be maintained at the same time. In this situation, the National Bank of Ukraine should pursue a non-dominant but effective policy to maintain price stability and stimulate growth. The expected investment boom in Ukraine will require appropriate monetary policy measures to absorb foreign capital inflows and avoid undesirable exchange rate appreciation. In this scenario, monetary easing should coexist with an expansionary fiscal policy that should prioritize investment. Thank you for your attention. The last slide provides references with detailed information about the structure of the model presented and the modeling results. And it's not an end yet. I'd like to return to the slide about this one, about scenarios post-war recovery of Ukraine. It's very similar to what what is going on in the world economy, especially with developed economies. The starting point was COVID-19, when when fiscal authority should to provide dominance and to support, to maintain demand. And these policy measures, the duration of these policy measures was not so short as it was before, when we have experience with financial crisis. I mean, the duration 1 year, maybe 1 year and a half, and from because of this, the recovery period was not the same as it was before. What we have now, that monetary dominance, I mean, high level of interest rate, that monetary authority try to combat inflation, prolong the period of recovery, and the growth incentives, became so slow that in the end of this year, mean 2023, Europe and some other countries do have problems with positive rates of growth, and the monetary authority have to make a decision whether to continue so high rate or not so high rate, but monetary dominance in some other forms, or stop monetary dominance and try to boost recovery, and means to boost growth using other instruments, maybe fiscal instruments. And for this, fiscal-monetary interaction in this year, especially in this year, is in the center of debate. And as for the Ukraine, I want you to take a look at this feature once more. What we have without these measures, without joint measures of fiscal and monetary policy, the period of recovery after fiscal dominance will be long, and as to the inflation, the period of inflation will be long too. Even the monetary authority try to do its best to combat it. If we, from the very beginning of this policy implementation scenario, try to jointly implement fiscal and monetary measures. What I mean? I mean that equation 1 demonstrate how to use effective Taylor rule and how to use effective sustainability fiscal rule to combat negative consequences of fiscal dominance. And this slide, figure 2, demonstrate that these measures are effective enough, and the period of inflation, it is about 10, maybe 12, yes, 12 quarters, no more. It's not very difficult for the economy to survive 12 quarters of high inflation. It's not the same as in scenario the first, when we have 30, even 40 quarters of high inflation. As to exchange rate for Ukraine's economy and stability of exchange rate is very important. You know that the share of external public debt is very high today, and the stability of exchange rate is very important for our economy. And you see in the slides that without joint measures, exchange rate is uncontrolled and high, and without I don't see how to manage exchange rate and how to stabilize it even within 5 years ahead. As when we use these joint measures, exchange rate, the threat of exchange rate volatility is minimal. As to public debt ratio, yes, it's in scenario second. This ratio in the first initial period from the shock slightly higher, but it is the cost we have to pay for our joint measures, and the duration of such high public debt ratio, it's less, maybe 1 year, maybe less than 1 year. It's not very difficult to survive for our economy if we implement such joint measures. So it's all I have to demonstrate in my research, and I'm ready for your question.
Dear Serhii, thank you very much for this presentation. This is indeed a very important topic, and now we talk about it a lot. And it's always the case when we talk about effective policy, it comes to structural models, right? So we need a structural model to understand what is more or less efficient in terms of our objectives. Here you demonstrate, well, in this exercise, you demonstrate the results for 2 policy rules, for a standard rule and also for an extended rule, which takes into account fiscal dominance. Did you try to have some welfare analysis of the optimality or optimal policy rule in this respect? I mean, when we see impulse response functions, we can make some conclusions, but it's always the case when it comes to DSG models, we always think about welfare costs or welfare benefits from policy rules. Did you try to do something like that?
If you speak about about households welfare, or maybe you speak about welfare as a joint measures of fiscal and monetary policy. What do you mean exactly, please?
So usually we speak about when we talk about welfare, we talk about households. Right, so it's.
I have to confess. I have to confess that I don't calculate welfare, but it's not the problem. No, to do such work because what was the main goal for this research? It was to obtain to solve the problem of high inflation, of high duration of high inflation after fiscal dominance. So I don't keep much attention, or maybe play some attention to the welfare itself. But if it is the point, it's not difficult for me to calculate welfare. I think this. As I have some experience of research, not my research, but world research, that in such thematic welfare correspond with overall macroeconomic performance. If macroeconomic volatility is controlled, so welfare effect is controlled too. So I think that it's my future, my maybe as a researcher, my intuition that results of such calculation will be positive, but I don't have not done it yet.
Yeah, I'm just asking because this is always the first question when you submit your paper to the journal. with the DSG model, they ask you whether you did welfare analysis, right? So this can be actually a very good extension for your paper as well, when you provide a more robust analysis in terms of optimal policy within your structure. That actually will benefit a lot for future publication. We also have a question from Anton Gruy. Anton, please.
Hello. Thank you very much for the topical presentation and for describing the model. I understand that your main idea is to expand to suggest the expansion of the Taylor rule, which a central bank like the National Bank of Ukraine should use. I would like to understand your model a little bit better. So I would like to ask you a couple of questions. The first one is rather technical. In the beginning of the presentation, you show that public debt correlates with broad money, with money aggregate M2, and you show some graphs. But they are in nominal terms. So my first question is, don't you think that this correlation might be spurious, because both of those variables are in nominal terms, so both of them are driven by growth of prices, and because of that, if we clean them from this growth of prices, if we put them in real terms, maybe this correlation will succeed, and if based on those estimations you calibrate your coefficients in the model, maybe the results, maybe the model will be different and the results will change. So this is my first, this is my first technical question. And the second one, I think I really enjoyed your slide 39. Maybe it is the most important slide, where you show the results of two different policies. But I would like to understand better what is going on in that simulation. So what are exactly the shocks that initiate this simulation? You say that this is something that will happen after, like on the recovery phase. Maybe there will be some fiscal expansion, but here we see that public debt ratio falls actually, and inflation falls in the beginning. So what is going on? And here we don't see interest rate reaction.
Yes,
so
I understand the question. Thank you very much. I begin with the first question, and starting point, it will be the graph. Sometime. Let me sometime. Oh, this one. As for the feature 2, this nominal values. As for this model macroeconomy model, and as for the you can see the relationship between M2 and domestic government bonds. This model use stable prices, mean 2007 year stable prices. As this is for the relationship between M2 and domestic government bonds. So you are right, and as through the macroeconometric model, this relationship use real wealth values, and as to this equation, as to this equation one, you the same. No, it is a continue of the relationship, but in more detail points. There is a relationship between broad money and domestic government bonds, but not domestic government bonds, all government, domestic, internal and external. And as to this equation, it's real terms too, because as we use dynamic stochastic general equilibrium models, we use real indicators and in such models. So as to the graphics of our neighboring countries, and why I translate this this representation in nominal, not in real wealth. First of all, I want to express the relationship itself, because this is a core point of the initial position of the macro model and of the structural model. This is initial position, and I want to express this relationship. But if we use not nominal but real terms, it's not the problem to compensate such information and to express it in using and I have already done that, but not for all countries, because I have some publication where I use maybe 8, maybe 10 countries. So you're right, the real values will be better translated, the relationship between broad money and public debt. And as for the model itself, they use these values in real debt, real values, but not in this particular charts. I mean F7, 8, 9, and 10. As for the second question concerning the representation, so the public shock so expressed that it's difficult for MATLAB to express the first starting point of reaction. So the first starting point of reaction is not negative, as you see in, so you don't see that, but I know that the first reaction of inflation, of public debt, it is not negative but positive, but this line is hidden. It's my fault. It's hidden, and you can't believe me that the first reaction, but it's very short, short enough that the program does not express it. I try to compensate such information with overall information. But if I change some technical details of the model, and I've done, I did it before, I can assure you that the first reaction of public debt ratio and inflation, it is a positive reaction. It's over zero. It's true. It's logical. It's economically logical. But as it depends on the violations. And changing such violations, we change the velocity of performance and the velocity, the power of public shock, how it is, how the stress is powerful or not so powerful for the economy, and the graphics change slightly, but to express the overall performance, I have to put it about 0.9 to be exact. As if you know what I'm talking about. Yes, very close to 1, not 0.8, 0.7, as for the public spending shock, 0.9. So the reaction of the economy is so quick that you don't see it on the graphs in this particular figure 12. Thank you. This is my answer. Yeah, I am end with my answer.
Okay, and maybe I will expand my question a little bit. So
Please,
on this graph, where you are not showing interest rate, but I'm curious to this particular shock, how should interest rate react with these two different policy settings?
I can, it's, so I have a full package of all parameters, of all indicators and their representations and their reactions to the shock. And I don't, if you want me to demonstrate it now, I have to start MATLAB and try to.
No, maybe, yeah,
I don't have for now the graphic, the chart with in such particular case with full 12 graphs for major macroeconomic indicators. And for your I swear that I sent you the graphs, these graphs with interest rate, and not only interest rate, but other indicators. If you for you that you have full full picture of the results to the public spending shock. So I do it for you.
Okay, thank you. I was just interested in a policy logic. So imagine that government expands its fiscal policy. What should be our reaction with this updated policy rule? Should we increase the interest rate more or less?
Start from the now. Now we have 16% of our discount rate. Yes, and I expect. I mean, it's my personal expectation that in the end of the year, National Bank lowers the rate to 12. It's my expectation only, and it is very logical, because we have a room of a policy decision how to respond to fiscal shock in the future, or not fiscal shock, something that will be just the shock. What's the future shocks? Future shock deals with amount of external financing. If the amount of external financing not as due as we have now, it will be shock for our country, because two set of public debt is external debt, and one set is internal debt. So, what the monetary policy should do, if the is fiscal from its side, try to dominate, to have dominance, to finance public spending by means of borrowing, monetary authority have to manipulate this policy rate, trying to set it a little bit higher, maybe. How long high it is the matter of the equation 2 and 3, as you see from the start of structural model representation. And this is one interesting moment as for our particular situation. We have two policy rates. One policy rate is discount rate, that is 16%, and another policy rate it is rate of return on deposit certificates for 3 months. It is 20%. And as for me, it's very profound and very logical policy decision to stabilize foreign exchange market using this particular instrument of rate of return on deposit certificates. But fiscal authority from its side, and it was partially adopted in our parliament, try to to test external income of commercial banks. Is all of that measures, as for me, keep the money within government sector. So government sector issue money, try to support budget, and this money stay at government sector, because National Bank of Ukraine and finance, Ministry of Finance, it's all government sector as a whole. What the logical and practical conclusion for policy decision in the future, how to stabilize exchange rate policy in such particular difficult situation. This question is very difficult, very profound to my mind, because the rate policy is too high for now. It's too high. It's a room for manipulation with policy rate. It's limited. As for the monetary target, I mean, we have interest rate target and we have monetary target. And the last tendency of world economy not to use interest rate target but to use monetary target. It's for Ukraine, what we have now, I see that this the policy dilemma. What to stabilize first? It is exchange rate market. It is money market, and these two markets, they are in connection with each other. It's I think it has to we have to start policy debates on this particular question, and as to results of these models, as of this public spending shock, we have to retranslate public dominance, actively manipulate this interest rate policy, but we have to do it not after the fiscal dominance, but we have to do it within the fiscal, during the fiscal dominance. It is the major the major point of my research. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the discussion. My just last comment. I think that your research would benefit if you just conclude with some particular steps which different authorities, fiscal authority and monetary authority should do. Because just right now your conclusion is they should interact or coordinate. It is okay, yes, but in which fashion exactly? Should the National Bank lower interest rate or hike interest rate, and for how long? This is such particular recommendation would be welcome, I think, in my mind. And now I think we are out of time. So, Alexander,
yes.
do we have other questions?
Yes, if we don't have other questions, Alexander unfortunately had to step out, so he gave me the honor to conclude. If we don't have any other questions, Serhii, thank you a lot for coming to our research seminar. Please feel free, yes, to share if you would like to, something with Anton on interest rate. And of course, if you prepare other research that you would like to share with us, please do reach out and we will organize other events in the future. So thanks everyone for coming. I think we're ready to to end this meeting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you a lot. Thank you too.